This is Defiance Daily Dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor. We have a lot to talk about today. And if you were paying attention to the news, the president started off today with some vile and racist posts about one of his predecessors in the White House. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that scandal, how the president tried to distract from it by attacking me and former White House lawyer Ty Cobb. That's for another time. But in the meantime, we are going to open today instead with a conversation about someone who is leading a very important resistance effort, a resistance effort that right now is going viral. And I want to bring him into the conversation early. Before I do, I'm going to bring in my defiance.org co-host, Xander Schultz. Xander, welcome to the conversation. We have an awesome guest that we want to get into right away, and in part because there's so much news, my friend, about what big tech has been doing to enable this administration's abuses of power.
Yeah, let's get into it. I know we got him calling in live from overseas, so we don't want to keep him up too late.
Well, let's bring him in. We've got Scott Galloway with us. Many of you know Scott Galloway. If you don't, he's professor of marketing at NYU's Stern School of Business, a New York Times bestselling author, and co-host of the Prof G Markets and Raging Moderates podcast. Scott, thank you so much for joining Defiance Daily. Welcome.
Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Xander.
I want to ask you right off the top, tell us about resist and unsubscribe. And I do want to know if this has already exceeded your expectations. I told you just briefly in the green room, I'm hearing about it from everyone. I don't know if you thought, hey, maybe this will be something that can contribute to the effort, or you knew this was going to be a big splash with folks, but I think it's already having a big impact. But tell us what the genesis was.
Thanks for saying that. That means a lot coming from you. So I generally have kind of sleptwalked through life, and what's happened in the political scene really hasn't bothered me. And lately I find that I'm tremendously rattled and anxious about what I see as a pretty slow but steady burn to fascism in a country that's, quite frankly, afforded me so many wonderful things. And I'm good at heckling from the cheap seats. I'm good at being indignant, but I realize that action absorbs anxiety, and I wanted to be a part of something, and I wanted to walk the walk, and I wanted to get out of the bleachers and on the field. And essentially I tried to zero in. I like to think I have a decent understanding of economics. And right now what you have is Trump only walks back from notions of annexing a sovereign nation or from tariffs when markets move, specifically the bond market crashes or the S&P go down. That's the only time. He doesn't seem to be shamed by protests, citizen outrage, or even what used to be co-equal branches of government or even the courts. He moves crisply when the markets move. And so I kind of zeroed in on a small number of companies. Actually, there's only 10 that represent 40% of the S&P. And it just so happens that those companies are exceptionally volatile and sensitive to their subscription revenue growth. And I thought, if I'm going to try and take on a fight here, how do I identify the soft tissue? And how do I aim with a sniper shot, a kill shot at that tissue? And the way, the means I came up with is to list a number of subscription sites from big tech who the president listens to and who move the markets, and create an easy way for people to go to this site and then unsubscribe. And the free gift with purchase here is, if, like me, you log on, you didn't realize you had an Amazon One account that you've been paying $199 a year. You didn't realize you had 3 Apple TV Plus accounts. You didn't realize you have Amazon Music and Spotify and Apple Music. You really don't need all 3. You have a discussion with your family about going from 6 streaming platforms down to 1. So I think this is the greatest ROI we can have with the minimal amount of consumer disruption. And I want to applaud the people turning out for protests or not showing up for work. But in terms of wanting to make a big difference without a huge amount of effort, this for me was resist and unsubscribe. Put up the site on Friday. It started with 6,000 uniques. We're now averaging 100,000 uniques. And I'm getting 2,000 to 3,000 screenshots a day of people showing their cancellation receipts.
Scott, this is awesome, man. This is great. I mean, there's a lot of evidence this works too. I was just going to say, there's a lot of evidence this works. Not only that Disney was kind of like the first round of this, right? When Kimmel was kind of threatened to go off the air.
That's right.
Reversed course immediately. I love that you're going after monthly recurring subscription. Also, long lineage of these types of actions having a huge impact. You think about the Montgomery bus boycotts. That was actually an economic boycott. South Africa, apartheid ended after a meaningful boycott. And so for, I've seen some criticism on, does this work, et cetera. This is one of the most effective things that a society can do. Even recently, Myanmar and Belarus also had a kind of a boycott strategy that was really effective in the country. So I want to commend you on that. I actually went through this whole thing this morning. I did every unsubscribe you had listed. Most wasn't all that painful. I always say this is the easiest version of defending democracy. I'd rather be doing this than in like a foxhole in Germany or in a trench, 100%. In World War I. But I'll say I was ChatGPT was a tricky one for me. And now I'm a new Claude user. That one was a little bit tricky. And I wondered, part of what's on your site, you make it really easy to unsubscribe, really easy. I recommend everyone go there. But you don't list necessarily like clear alternatives. If you're not doing this, go here, or necessarily there's brand partnerships. And I was thinking, man, like if, Hulu is the big winner, they seem like one of the only streaming services. Would you want to partner with a Hulu and have them get behind this and push this? Or did that feel like it would muddy the waters making recommendations? What were your thoughts there?
I don't think I'd want to partner with Hulu because then it would start to look like I was bought off in a bit of a show for certain parties versus the other. I'd like to I'd like to partner with Defiance or someone like that who could list thoughtful alternatives. Also, I think I'm humble enough or not arrogant enough to tell people which companies to unsubscribe from and which ones not to, or how long. What I'm trying to do here is send a signal to people that the greatest weapon in this battle against the slow burn to fascism is a weapon that's been hiding in plain sight. And that is 70% of our economy is consumer driven, and a disproportionate amount of it is based on very thin revenues, subscription revenues from a small number of companies. I'll give you an example, and I apologize for the wonky nature of this, but you mentioned unsubscribing from ChatGPT. Their paid version is $20 a month. So when you cancel, you're denying them of $240 in subscription revenues. OpenAI is raising money at an $850 billion capitalization or value on $20 billion of revenue, meaning they're trading at 40 times revenues. So just that 3-minute act or 30-second act of unsubscribing from ChatGPT, just what you did this morning, cost them $10,000. If you could get 10,000 people to do that, which is very realistic in this scenario, we would essentially be taking $100 million out of the pockets of OpenAI. If enough people do this, they're going to feel it. And it's typically in movements. It's no one protest. It's no one set of, economic strikes. It's a cumulative event. And what I'm trying to convince people of is like, look, if you're like me and you have very strong opinions and you're very vocal, but sometimes the music doesn't match the words in terms of your actions, this is an easy way to have really big impact. And the free gift with purchase here is you're going to find out when I unsubscribed from AT&T, I had 4 AT&T accounts, 1 for my BlackBerry, 2 for iPads that I haven't used in 8 years. So I've literally wasted somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000 at AT&T because I never took the time to unsubscribe and find out that the good people at AT&T don't remind you when you're still when you still have a phone contract on a BlackBerry from 2014. So this is just as Dry January is a chance to recalibrate your thinking about the amount of alcohol you consume. This is a chance to really look at how much money you're spending. I looked at my Uber. When I canceled Uber, I've taken 3,700 rides over the last 10 years. Now, this is a story of Uber privilege. I have economic security. I use Uber Lux as my private driver. Last year, I spent $35,000 on Uber. I'm going to spend less than $3,000 this year by taking the Tube here in London, the amazing MTA, Uber X's, and $32,000 less in revenue from Uber. If enough people do that, they're going to feel it. And in concert with protests, in concert with rallies, in concert with a great independent media such as yourself, I think we can all play a part in this pushback.
Scott, I love the comparison to Dry January. I mean, I think this tees it up to be fuck Trump February pretty successfully. And I do want to ask you if you see other catalyst moments on the horizon here. And I don't want to put you in a position of having to predict the terrible things Trump might do, but the Disney moment was such a powerful one that showed people exactly as Xander said, and as you've continued to show people, that doing a small act like this can add up to something huge, can shape policy, can influence markets and the president, even though people always doubt that. But it also tends to correspond to moments of outrage. I wonder, as you look across the calendar, if you think there are going to be big moments to really get people to do this in mass. I mean, they seem to be doing it in mass on your app, but I mean, is there a catalytic moment? And maybe you haven't even thought about that, but I'm also thinking we've got the No Kings 3 protest on March 28th. I mean, that should be a moment of people needs to do this by then. And then if they haven't, I'd imagine folks should be in the crowd there, carrying around your web address on their phone and just walking up to people and saying, hey, you should do this right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on this. So one of my Yodas on this, Timothy Snyder, is kind of an expert on protests and how revolutions and overthrows of autocrats have taken place in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. And it looks as if on the protest side, when you get to 3.2% of the population or above, something usually happens. So far, the No Kings was 2.5%. Also, it tends to be a series of, of cumulative events. I'm terrible at picking what the red line is or the trigger point is, because I thought we crossed a red line 10 years ago when there was a public airing of him bragging about grabbing a woman's genitals. I thought we crossed the red line when he adopted a century-old tactic of tariffs, which do nothing but elegantly lose prosperity. I thought the overrun of the government, I thought an insurrection that forced our representatives to be hiding the rafters. I have identified incorrectly a series of red lines. What I can tell you the trigger for me was where I thought, I need to do something, was when his cabinet appointee, Secretary Noem, stood up and looked in the cameras and described an ICU nurse serving veterans as a domestic terrorist and someone who was brandishing a weapon with intent to massacre federal agents. It reminded me of a book that had a huge impact on me and I think turned me into a progressive at the age of 16, and that is 1984. And there's a line in the book that says their final act was to ask us to deny our eyes and our ears. And I thought, this is just, I need to do something here. Everybody has their own line. Everybody needs to decide what companies they want to unsubscribe from. Everybody needs to decide when they might resubscribe and the commitment of time, treasure, and talent that they want to make. But for me, having this wonderful man be murdered, having a mother shot in the face 3 times by a secret mass police, just quite frankly took me back to the early 30s in terms of my memories, my understanding of history. And just on a personal level, I live here in London. My mother slept in the tube during the Blitz, where they passed out gas masks in the shape of Disney characters so they wouldn't be afraid to put them on. And if Russia, Britain, and the US hadn't pressed back on fascism, my mom's life would have ended with a train ride. So this is not only something that I think is effective, it's a nod to my mother and the people who have sacrificed, as you pointed out at the very beginning of the show, Miles, so much more than we have, and we're free riding off their sacrifice. So I feel like we have a debt to be paid.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned your mother, because I feel like Minneapolis is kind of the beginning of our keep strong and carry on moment in America, where you're seeing intimidation doesn't work. It solidifies the opposition. People become more brave in the face of that type of terror. And it's been wonderful to see how quickly America, specifically Minneapolis, organized. Dude. I had a question about this campaign. Right now, it's I would say it's all stick, no carrot. Right? It is. Get away from these organizations. They're behaving badly. Do you see there being a point in time where you said, when we were in the green room, some of these CEOs are even reaching out to you, where you say, look, if you fulfill these commitments, if you stop doing X, Y, Z, if you fulfill these commitments, we can also re-socialize that you're back on the nice list. Do you see anything like that in the future of this campaign? Do you have clear requests for these CEOs?
I don't see myself as, I was on this morning with the CEO of Netflix, who I have tremendous respect for and even affection for. I think he's a wonderful man. And what I've said is, look, I don't have total moral clarity around who's on this list and who isn't. I want to send a signal to consumers that their spending is their spending and they get to make their own decisions. I think what you said that's more powerful is the idea of rewarding good actors. So something I'm planning on doing. I've had all of my money with Goldman Sachs, or a lot of it with Goldman Sachs, for a long time. I have huge respect for the organization. They have done a great job for me. I am disappointed that there aren't more CEOs of financial firms who he listens to, who are great leaders. David Solomon, Jamie Dimon, these are great leaders. and sometimes mentioned as possible presidential candidates. I am disappointed that individually and collectively, they have not spoken out and pushed back more vigorously. So what I'm doing along the lines of what you're talking about, or I'm seriously considering, is I'm going to transfer my assets to the Royal Bank of Canada branch in Minneapolis. And I'm also thinking about how, but to your point, not only how can we punish firms, but how can we reward some of the firms that have taken a leadership stand? Because you know what? They're going to be really easy to find because you can basically count them on one hand.
I'm so glad that, Scott, you're calling out the corporate leaders, because look, I'm like you. Well, I don't know if you would describe yourself as a techno optimist necessarily, but I'm techie and kind of a techno optimist with a dystopian twist in there, like a lot of folks that we know in the space. I know a lot of these different leaders, virtually all of them in private, despise Donald Trump at best,
100%.
Think he's a fascist at worst. Almost entirely, they've been silent. And this time around, far more so than the first time. And in a little way, I get it. At the beginning of this administration, we talk a lot on this program about how the start of the second Trump administration, society was more fearful than I've ever felt it in my lifetime. There was social fear like we've never seen. I mean, after our family got hit by an executive order, we couldn't even get restaurants in major cities to host fundraisers for us because people were worried about their employees being deported. We had restaurants cancel fundraisers for our legal defense fund because they didn't want to serve Diet Cokes, worried that their employees might get targeted because I was in the crosshairs of Trump. That's all changed now. We're a year later and people are standing up. Whole entire states like Minnesota are standing up. But those corporate leaders that you point to, they are still being so cowardly. People, I'll call them out. People like Jamie Dimon and Sam Altman and these other folks who I know what they think privately. I know what Tim Cook thinks privately about this man. They're capitulating. And so, going to their customers and appealing there is a way to do it. I wonder if you think that, as Xander noted, there are other ways to put pressure on those corporate leaders. Maybe it's, their friends and peers. Maybe it's foreign leaders in other countries willing to put the pressure on them. In addition to consumers, do you see other points of pressure to get them, and not even to say things they don't want to say, just to speak their conscience?
So to your point, history has been brutal on nations who ignore or whose business leaders get co-opted and trade off shareholder value for democratic rights. If you go back 90 years, arguably the most enlightened society of that century or the previous century, an appreciation for art, academia, open immigration, capitalism, free elections, great science-based research. It wasn't the US or Britain, it was Germany. And essentially the captains of industry there, of what was one of the most productive manufacturing bases in the history of the world, were very worried about the rise of Hitler. And Hitler sensed this, and he went and met with them and said, if you stay out of my way and support me, I will crush the trade unions and you're all going to get much, much wealthier because labor is your biggest cost. So they went along with him, and then it was too late. And a lot of them really regretted that decision. And I see echoes of that now, that these individuals will tell you privately, I'm just going to wait him out. He punishes firms. I have to be focused around shareholder value. I empathize with the idea of going first, but I don't see any reason why 10, 50, 100 of the Fortune 100 couldn't get together and just say, the reason I'm a billionaire, the reason I captain a $1 trillion company that creates tremendous jobs and prosperity for America is because we are standing on the shoulders of people who push back on what is going on here. And Republican or Democrat, there needs to be 100 CEOs that step forward, not one. That one will get hit hard and the number two won't want to go. It needs to be 100 of them. In terms of pressure points, I'm on that. I'm sort of an emotional or an intellectual support dog at those cocktail parties you're talking about. I get invited to a lot of them because they always want one or two quote unquote academics there. So I know these people, and you're right. They're very critical of Trump behind his or her back. I don't think there's any shaming them. I don't think they're scared of being shamed. The pressure point you brought up that I think is probably going to happen, and you're starting to see it. Have you noticed all these nations are starting to investigate X, or they're age gating social media? They're doing that for the right reasons, for protection of children. But I think they're also fed up with American tech companies coming in, sucking their media companies dry, and all they get in exchange for that is a president who declares economic war on them, and they can't tell what his next sclerotic, weird blow sugar decision is going to be. That is going to put pressure on these companies. I wouldn't be surprised if big tech companies start getting kicked out of foreign nations in the EU, and possibly a lot of them make an effort not to work with American services firms. At some point, people are going to say, we don't need to do our banking with JP Morgan. We don't need Accenture as our key supply chain consultant. I think that's coming, and I do think it'll have an impact.
I'm glad to hear you say that, my friend. I would also add into that mix, the shame may not get them, but the prospect of investigations scares these folks. And I noticed a shift with the ballroom. There was a point last year where I think these companies felt a little high on the hog because it was so easy to start influencing this administration in a way that they couldn't before, that they had these new avenues to donate to Donald Trump. And they were hearing that the White House had a blacklist and a whitelist, which they do for top companies. They've got a blacklist of companies that aren't saying enough good things about the president right now, haven't contributed to causes he supports. And they've got a whitelist of the ones that have done the right things in view of the White House. First of all, there's been too little conversation about that. I mean, that was a briefly widely reported story. That's a huge deal that the White House, the president of the United States, has a whitelist and blacklist of companies. But they saw that and said, great, now we know how to curry favor with the president. So they started donating to things like the ballroom to curry favor. No company's doing that out of the generosity of their heart. Google didn't decide, well, we need a White House ballroom. The United States needs that. Yeah. The only reason the company's doing that is to curry favor with the president. But I noticed, Scott, that as soon as members of Congress, prominent members of Congress said, it may not happen right now, but eventually you will be investigated for this. You saw people not donating so quickly and readily to these types of efforts. And I think their government affairs office is saying, oh, shoot, maybe we shouldn't have leaned in so hard. So that does seem to be effective if we can get Congress at the same time, at least folks in the political opposition, to say, we are going to be looking very closely at what your companies have done to try to ingratiate yourselves with this administration.
I think, look, the world runs on incentives. And I think it's really important for Democratic lawmakers and attorney generals all over the country right now to remind ICE agents that the statute of limitations on murder is never. And there's no such thing as what Stephen Miller referenced. There's no such thing as federal immunity. And that with respect to democracy and an FBI and a DOJ that has not been weaponized by the president, that typically those institutions have a proud legacy of having a very long memory and a very far reach. So be clear, at some point, if you are someone who showed up to a legal protest in a mask and pumped 3 bullets into a mother's face, your day in court is coming.
Scott, I'm also I'm so happy you mentioned the history component here as well. You know, when you talk about Germany, you don't have to even reach back that far. Look at what happened in Putin's Russia.
Yeah.
You know, you had a bunch of successful businessmen, and they were basically given this ultimatum, right? It's, you know, live on your knees or die on your feet, essentially. And that's what's happened over the course of Putin's reign there too. And so we've said this over and over again to different demographics on the show, whether it's the ICE agents, you know, who were saying, like, Trump is obviously trying to get them killed so he can have the escalation he wants, to the business leaders here who, guys, you know, go read a few history books. This doesn't work out for you. Capitulating now doesn't mean you're safe. In fact, bullies keep picking on the people who capitulate. And if this guy wins in the long term, you're all screwed. That's how this works. So I'm so happy you mentioned that, Scott. Scott, before we let you go, can you plug one more time exactly what you're doing and what people can do? Here at Defiance, we're all about taking collective action. That's the whole reason we stood this thing up, to answer the question, what can I do? So your effort is absolutely perfect for our members.
If you're like me and you feel some anxiety over these recent activities by the Trump administration and ICE, I think the most effective, lowest friction way to have a big impact is to go to www.resist and unsubscribe. Look at all your subscriptions to big tech. I've listed a bunch of them, tried to make it easy to unsubscribe. And unsubscribing from duplicate LLMs, ride-hailing apps, streaming media companies, online music companies will have a huge impact based on the multiple on revenues in the marketplace they get. And this is how we go after the soft tissue of the Trump administration. He has shown that he responds to markets, and the people he listens to are the people who captain these businesses. So if you're like me and you want to show some action, you're sick of just complaining, if you have time to protest, more power to you. If you're devoting your time and treasure and talent, I salute you. But an easy way to send a very clear blue flame signal to the administration and to the markets is to go to resist and unsubscribe, and also a really good way to save some money.
Scott Galloway.
I love that. No one has yet said you can resist and defy this administration and save money while you're doing it. It's the perfect pitch. Better, faster, cheaper resistance from Scott Galloway.
There you go.
I'll say he picked up a fan this morning after I went through the resist and unsubscribe. I told my wife about it, and I don't think she heard the resist part. She just heard the unsubscribe. Fired up about the movement already. So, Scott, thank you so much for taking time with us, buddy. We're certainly on board, and we're going to help not only get our members to participate, but also push this out into the world. So thank you for what you're doing in your leadership.
I appreciate it. And guys, thanks for fighting the good fight. I appreciate that you, unlike many of us, are actually in the fight and part of the resistance. Very much appreciate your action orientation.
Thank you,
Thanks,
brother.
my friend. We appreciate you. Scott Galloway, incredible guy, Xander. And I think this is just, one of those examples of exactly the type of thing we've been wanting to see folks do. And you're reaching a level of frustration right now across the country that these things are now popping off in a good way, and people are taking to them. So I think it's remarkable what Scott's built, and hopefully we can have him on again to keep the momentum going on this.
100%. And I'll just say before you move on to the next section here, the thing he mentioned where it's, he's saying, hey, we got to get to this mass participation. We've got to get to that 3% number. Ezra from Indivisible was on saying the same thing. He was saying marching is just one piece of the puzzle. And so we're starting to see what Ezra meant. Marching is a piece of the puzzle. And then you get those participants that are in No Kings 3 to participate in something like resist and unsubscribe, and participate in things like a general strike. And so you're starting to see the whole movement come together and understand maybe what that looks like. What is that 3% doing? Why can it be so effective? Why would it stop authoritarianism? It's because tools like this are being added to the toolkit for folks to participate in beyond the marching.
That's right. That's right. Well, Xander, as you noted, there's another big story from today that we can't go on without talking about on today's show. And in fact, we're going to talk about it for the rest of the show, because for a lot of reasons, this is very important. And it says not only what the character is of the man in the White House, but it potentially reflects on the character of this nation. Donald Trump posted a racist depiction of former President Barack Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama as apes around 11:44 Eastern last night. We will not be sharing the imagery on air so as not to give it power, but if you have not already seen it, we venture for you to do so. After over 12 hours of this being up online, the White House buckled under pressure, including from Republicans, and took it down. Not because they felt bad, but because the backlash across the aisle has been so severe. Of course, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was first asked to comment on the matter, where she stated the following, quote, "This is from an internet meme video depicting President Trump as the king of the jungle and the Democrats as characters from The Lion King. Please stop the fake outrage and report on something today that actually matters to the American public." So it wasn't him. He was just sharing something from a harmless video for those who enjoy the Disney classic. And his policies, right, we're all confused. Except we know exactly what the video meant, as this isn't the first time someone was exposed for posting it. Here's a PBS Kentucky report back in October 2025.
The Hardin County Republican Party chair is apologizing for a video showing former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. The Courier-Journal reports the video was posted to, then deleted from, the county party's Facebook account. Chair Bobby Coleman says she did not initially see the video as racist. She says she saw it as a video portraying President Donald Trump as a Lion King triumphing over liberal Democrats. She said, quote, "As someone who does not engage with racist tropes, I did not consider the underlying meaning that this video may have had. I am not racist, and any suggestion to the contrary does not reflect my values or character." End of her quote. Robert Benvenuti, who is chair of the Republican Party of Kentucky, put out this statement saying, quote, "The Republican Party of Kentucky condemns hate in all its forms. This post is vile and reprehensible and is directly adverse to all that we stand for as a party and a nation." End quote. Benvenuti says the party is investigating.
Right. The internet does not forget, and with this dud of an excuse, the White House pivoted today, again, stating to the press that, quote, "a staffer erroneously made this post." So a staffer was on the president's personal account close to midnight. Apparently, they're allowed to post on the president's account close to midnight, and then they let it stay up on his account for 12 hours. Mind you, this story broke in the earliest morning hours of today. It was the very first thing I saw when I woke up this morning. The very first thing I texted the defiance.org team about. And yet the White House waited until midday to take it down because it was a staffer. Let me just say this. When I first went into the Trump administration, I didn't believe the claims that Donald Trump, in his heart of hearts, if there is one, is a racist or a bigot. Because in my time in the Republican Party, I heard those accusations a lot against good people who actually did not hold bigoted views. Whether you love or hate George W. Bush, when I worked in that administration, I was saddened to hear people say they thought he was an actual racist. The man wasn't. Even if you disagreed with his policies, he wasn't. And so Donald Trump, despite seeing all of his extraordinary flaws, I wanted to think, well, the man's probably not an actual racist. But as I was talking to our team about earlier today, all it took was a couple of meetings in the Oval Office for me to see who that guy really was. Because in meetings, he would talk about places where he did not want to see any more entrants into the United States. Places like Ethiopia and Somalia and Haiti. And in almost the same breath, the president would talk about places where he wished we would open the floodgates to bring in more people. Places like Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. The conclusion was inescapable. The president of the United States did not want poor black and brown people coming into the United States. He wanted his Homeland Security officials to let in more rich white people. That was pretty shocking. And this is that man today, that same man. I don't want to hear excuses from this White House about how a staffer did it, the president didn't do it. It's just a play on a Disney classic. He knew what he was doing. They knew what they were doing. And they only took it down because people on their own team were upset. So yes, not only is Donald Trump an obvious bigot, but he is a scared one. The walls are closing in on him. And when people are scared, the mask, it slips. And right now, Donald Trump is losing on all fronts. Nearly 2/3 of Americans say ICE has gone too far, according to a recent poll released by NPR. At 65%, this is an 11-point increase of ICE disapproval since last summer, driven surprisingly by independents venturing into the double digits. This is to say nothing of his overall approval ratings, which are at the lowest of his term at 41%, and a net approval rating of -15%, according to The Economist. And by the way, his name was mentioned an additional 1,000 times in the newly released Epstein files last Friday. And now, to keep himself from the undeniable fate of being crushed in the 2026 midterms, he is making bigger and bolder moves to jeopardize voting rights for Americans. But of course, Donald Trump has once again shot himself in the foot. In 2024, according to Pew Research's validated voter survey, Trump won 15% of black voters, a 7-point increase from 2020. At a time when Black conservatives are urging the GOP to reach out further to Black voters to help make gains in 2026, according to Politico, Trump does this. So, here to talk with us on the potential effects and work being done in support of Black voters is the founding executive director of the Black Male Voter Project and mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, Mayor Mondale Robinson. Mondale, welcome to the program, and I'll bring Xander Schultz, my Defiance.org co-founder, back into the conversation. Appreciate you joining us today, my friend, and thank you for waiting. This was, well, look, I want your reaction to what happened this morning.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not tone deaf or it doesn't bother. It's not like it does not bother me when I see white people show up like this, especially Donald Trump. But what's ironic about this is, some of us want to believe that, Trump is behaving in this manner because he is losing power. And maybe it's got something to do with the fact that his minions told him, when you get back in office, your power will be unchecked. Maybe that's part of it. But it's also something more than that's happening. It's more intrinsic. It's something more American at play here. And what I mean by that is it's not disconnected from America's high tolerance of Black suffering, i.e., we continue to be enraged by the murdering of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, and we should, but this country can't tell you anything about Keith Porter Jr., or we can't tell you anything about the 32 people of color who died in ICE custody in 2025. So the arrogance of this press secretary and Donald Trump and the rest of those to try to blow this off as this is fake outrage, it's married to those people who would go to church with Bill Connor after he would unleash dogs on Black teens protesting the fact that they couldn't sit at certain counters or they couldn't register to vote without being killed or lynched. It's also not divorced from the actions of those who would look at their papers on Sunday and see that they were planning a lynching in the neighborhoods and either go to that lynching or scroll right past it unflinched. So what I'm saying is Donald Trump's actions from the Resolute desk or the presidency residence may be racist, and Donald Trump in himself may be racist as he's shown throughout his history, but it's also as American as apple pie in baseball. This is whiteness we're talking about. It is unchecked in 400 plus years of this experiment we call America. So I'm not surprised or shocked that they will blame it on a staffer that erroneously posted in the middle of a 12 or 13 other posts that Donald Trump posted and that staffer is not being blamed for. I'm also not surprised that Donald Trump posted at all, because they will tell lies and the world won't even check those lies in an easy way. It is not an ode to the Lion King to put the blackface of people on apes, mainly because there were no freaking apes in Lion King. It's Disney. It's one of the business.
This is the best point I've heard all day.
There are no apes in the damn movie. So, and I think, it's that level of like, this is why I'm convinced now, this is why they wanted everybody to be anti-woke, because to miss these dog whistles, you have to be completely asleep. I mean, you could be just waking up in the morning and catch the racism that these people are putting off. And I think it's dastardly for us to pretend that what we're not witnessing is the most anti-Black, people of color administration since those during slavery.
Well, Mondale, I think I'm going to stop for a second and just tell the audience what I said about Michael Skolnick last week, which is I love Mondale Robinson about as much as a straight guy can love another guy. This is one of my best friends, and he's been such an important and powerful player in this movement, not only to fight authoritarianism, but to change how economics and power works in this country. And so I just want to make sure to give you your flowers before I dive into the next question here. I think what you're saying, whereas like part of this is Trump, but part of this is business as usual in America, could help contextualize the question I'm about to ask you, which is we saw Trump, despite having a very volatile first administration, grow in popularity amongst Black men. even when running against a black female candidate, for instance. For people on the outside that aren't as in tune with the black male vote as you, that was pretty surprising. Can you help us understand what that movement was about and what kind of impact these things, we should expect these things to have, or maybe what needs to happen for these things to have an impact?
Yeah, so I think a couple things can be true here. What we saw is a couple of things. Donald Trump has not, since he came on the political scene, grown in popularity with black men. What we saw was black men disdain for the American political process, the electoral process where we invisible black men and then hold them account to a standard that no one else is. Let me say that clearer. Donald Trump's 15% of black voters represented an increase in the percentage of black men and black voters, but it wasn't a raw number increase. It was because so many people who voted for Democrats the other time against Donald Trump sat out the election. And I think people continue to mix that up, and that in itself is confusing to people. So there's no growth. Ever since Donald Trump has been on the scene, we've seen black men become more progressive in their politics. Black men, for instance, since Donald Trump has been on the scene, has outperformed everybody on women's right to choose. We saw in Ohio, the closest demographic to black men being black women were 8 points behind us on women's right to choose. We even voted more in that year in Ohio, black men did, for women's right to choose than we did for the legalization of marijuana. So this idea that black men are becoming more conservative is it's a misnomer, and it's also talking about percentages and not raw numbers. And that is because more people that are participating that would be progressive chose to sit out election, and that is because of traditional politics where we treat black men as a transaction and we ignore the trauma of the 15th Amendment. And I don't think people talk about the 15th Amendment as trauma inducing or the epigenetics harm that's associated with being black man and watching the world tell you now have the franchise only to be lynched about it or be in prison, and then being told that because you are in prison, you can no longer exercise that enfranchisement. You see that in the way that black men participate now and how it's linked and related to the number of black men that participated 20, 30 years after the passage of the 15th Amendment. Meaning right now, about 27% of black men in this country that are already registered only vote in every election. The other 70% are what the world calls sporadic. It's what I call low investment voters. And then if you go back to the turn of the 20th century, you see that about the same percentage of black men were voting then. So what we're telling the world is your way of playing politics does not address the problems that are killing us, literally killing us, yet you expect us to show up based on some kind of rational or rationale-based model, but we need a trauma-based model when we're engaging black men if we are to move them from the couch and put faith in a system that has not served us in ever.
If you talked about a transactional relationship. Sorry, Miles. You talked about that transactional relationship. If you were to speak dead on to the Democratic Party right now, like all the leadership, listen, guys, this is why you are still failing in the face of literal authoritarianism and racism. What does the opposite of a transactional relationship look like? Go ahead and speak directly to Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, that whole bunch.
And we're bringing them on right after this.
Yeah. So it's easy. It's easy. It's stop spending 80%, 70% of your budget with ads, on ads. Take that money and invest it. Become almost like a mutual aid organization. Address the problems that people are suffering from. This is why people don't understand it. If you look at Ilhan Omar, this is a candidate that usually spends less money during an election cycle than she does in off years. That's because she's in her community doing more for her community. And it requires less when you have a relationship, when you're helping people do things like address what's plaguing them most, their electric bills, their lack of food in their refrigerator. When you're providing answers and solutions to those problems, when you're asking them to vote, it becomes a no-brainer. The on-ramp from people who have relationships that address people's problem, it's so much easier to get them to the ballot than it is for somebody that shows up like Hakeem Jeffries in an ad and try to recite Biggie quotes or Biggie verses with no context and also none of the swagger that Biggie had, even though he himself is from Brooklyn. So what I would tell the party and leadership is stop pretending to be black and just act up and just show up and act like you care when it's not an election cycle, and see how bad and how great that will work for you.
I have to say that, you know, I don't have the experience of being a black man in America, but this morning, after I saw that post, there was just a visceral moment of human empathy where, you know, I've had friends say to me before, especially when I was deeper in the Republican Party, like, hey, Miles, you don't understand that when people in the party say things that are racist, yeah, they're not you and they're not the ones you look up to, but when they say it and they don't see y'all come down hard on them, they assume the rest of you share those views. And today I felt like I got a little group chat of some friends that are MAGA voters, but the type of MAGA voters who are like, well, Miles, we don't support the president persecuting you, our friend. We just like some of the other things that he's doing, which is its own basket of apples, right? I got to deal with friends saying, well, we can compartmentalize. We hate that he's doing bad stuff to you, but, you know, don't worry about this. And I went into that group chat this morning and I said, so when is it going to be too much for you guys' conscience that he's saying this about your friends and neighbors, that he's given them a time machine back to the 1950s to say horrible shit about black people? And you know what I heard? Crickets.
Yeah.
People they want to do a thing where they can say, look, it's not me, it's him. But by burying their head in the sands, they are condoning it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's why I kind of chuckled when I was backstage when you said George Bush wasn't a racist and you felt some kind of way. Racism is not a permanent state, and I think that's what confuses people. And action you could be the best ally in the world and make a racist moment, but you have to move past that moment. And I think that's what happens. People forget that racism is not a permanent state. I firmly believe that when people aren't acting anti-racist, then they're just being racist. So those who choose to sit silent and compartmentalize Donald Trump's actions, that privilege is a racist act in itself. And I think we should be uncomfortable enough to be comfortable enough telling people that they're wrong and racist in those moments, because there's no growth without it. And I also think, you know, we need to demystify what racism is. It's not just a group of guys with bad outfits. I mean, white hoods. It's more than that. It's those who will sit silent on a group chat about the actions of Donald Trump, the acts of saying people from Haiti are eating your dogs and your cats. It is the acts of saying that people from Africa are from shithole countries. It is the acts of saying that everybody black should not be around my money. It is the act of allowing his dad to skate clean, knowing he's a Klansman, right? Like, so I mean, these are the way that American whiteness allows for racist, what we call racist acts, the big racist acts to exist. The silence of well-meaning white people.
There's a great MLK quote about it, right? Mondale, you and I spoke about this a lot. I mean, the MLK quote from the Birmingham jail, I'm just going to read it here so I get it right. The Negro's great stumbling block is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice.
Order than justice. I get it all the time. As mayor, I tore down a Confederate monument that's in the middle of a park. Mind you, I am the mayor of a town that is 90+% black, and there's a Confederate monument sitting in the middle of the park. And on the left side of it, it was a white-only water fountain that my mom couldn't drink out of in her life. So I get the press, and everything I get from the feedback I get is it was the manner he tore down. It's how he talks about racism. He's making everybody white racist. I don't make everybody white. You just heard Xander tell you he's one of my closest friends. I don't make everybody white racist. I make every white racist racist. And I think we need more people making white racist racist. It needs to be uncool again. As much as Donald Trump is giving them the pass to say the N-word or act it out, we need to shut it down. And the we is not people just to look like me. We need more people participating in the brown and blue eye experiment intentionally, and not in a way like Tim Wise, where you're gonna get rich off it and not provide any solutions. I'm talking about radical love, radical calling in of family members.
Well, before we let you go, I want to say I'm happy you two met, because I think you two are the friends I text the most to say, do you need to get out of Dodge? You can stay at my house. So you guys might, between the Klan chasing Mondale and the Trump regime chasing Miles, you guys might be roommates in Oregon at some point. So I'm happy you met.
You just said the same group of people are chasing us.
Too good.
That's true. That's true. That was a weird framing.
I can't top that. I can't top that. I had all these other little comments I wrote on a note card, but I can't top that. I can't say something better than that. Mondale, I look forward to hanging out, my friend. We're going to get together in person. We'll get the three of us together, and we'll do this not on three little squares sometime. Super grateful for you joining us, my friend. Your outspokenness on everything in this moment, and I hope you'll come back.
Indeed. Peace and blessings, y'all. Y'all be great.
Hey, brother.
Take care, my friend. Dang it, Xander. You're 2 for 2. It's like another friend of yours that I didn't know, but that I got to meet on a live stream in front of thousands.
Yeah. You're slowly being bear hugged by the progressive movement. You meet us all. We're pretty nice guys. We have good ideas. You're gonna like it.
Make it stop. Make it stop. Wow. So many things to unpack there. One note that I wrote down, Xander, while Mondale was talking is there's a piece I want to write. Maybe it's this weekend, maybe it's next week. Call it the free rider bigotry problem, because in conservative circles, we talk all the time about the free rider problem and what happens if you give too much free shit to people, inside government, based off of the old game theory construct of a free rider problem. But there's this free rider bigotry problem, which is the silent conservatives not responding to things like we saw today, aligning with that MLK quote, basically giving sanction to this bigotry from the White House. They're just riding on the president's coattails. They're letting that happen. They don't have to do anything because he's carrying the water of the bigotry. That needs to be spoken in conservative circles.
Miles, I imagine has a lot to do with kind of what Mondale was speaking about in the Black community, which is, it's not necessarily that Trump's becoming more popular with them, but that they are tired of the status quo, or maybe don't feel like there's another place to go. I imagine, I mean, Miles, just reflect on kind of your time as a conservative, put yourself in those shoes. What would they need to see from the opposition, the political opposition, to make them say, because I imagine a lot of people don't like it, but they're saying a lot of people are choosing the lesser of two evils, right? And this, you and I think, correctly point out, guys, the evil that you thought Trump was in 2016 has grown a lot. There's a lot more evidence that this is much worse than the guy you originally aligned yourself with. What do you think they need to see from the political opposition to say, okay, now that side is the lesser of two evils and I can jump ship?
Well, look, one thing they need to see is, I hate to put it this way because there's going to be reflexive angst towards it on the left, is open arms. And I'm not saying you need to actually bear hug Marjorie Taylor Greene, but we talked about this the other day. The political opposition needs to show an openness to receiving converts. I will tell you, I'm in the political opposition in the United States and aligned with Democrats in this country in taking this guy down. But it wasn't easy because it wasn't made easy for me. When I left the Trump administration, Xander, now people didn't know I had been this anonymous critic of Trump from the inside, and I hadn't come forward publicly in my own name yet. But in that intervening window, there should have been folks in the political opposition who made an appeal to me and said, it's never too late to do the right thing. Come forward and speak out against Trump. We urge you to. We welcome you. We will amplify your voice. Instead, after I left that administration, 24,000 people signed a petition to get me fired from the first job that I took when I left. Now, that didn't hit me hard in the gut or conscience because I knew who I was. I knew what I'd actually done in the administration. I knew what I was prepared to do to try to take down Donald Trump. But think about all the other people who might have been folks that could be won over to the political opposition, who were immediately told, you are toast. We're going to make the rest of your life miserable, instead of, I bet you regret working for that man. I bet you want to come forward and tell the truth, in creating an opening. And that was years ago for me. I don't harbor any issues with it, but I know a lot of the people that I tried to get to come forward who had damning things to say to destroy this guy were terrified twofold. They were terrified that their lives would be ruined by a man who threatens people with death and destruction if they turn against him, and worried there would be no safe harbor on the other side. And so what did they do? They just shut up. There was no incentive for people to speak out. We've got to create an incentive. We've got to create an off-ramp. That doesn't mean saying right now to Stephen Miller, Stephen, you're forgiven from everything you've done. Please come forward to our side. But hell, everyone's seen Star Wars, right? Even Darth Vader has redemption at the very end. Redemption is possible. We forget that. I'm not just talking about in the political context. In life, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, your faith teaches you this, that redemption is possible, that forgiveness is an extraordinary thing. And you know what? It may damn well be the thing that supercharges the political opposition in this country if we say, you know what? We're going to take those people because we know they have a conscience. It may be the tiniest flicker of a flame left inside of some of these folks who've decided to stick with this man through the low depths of the bigotry we saw this morning. But there's still a flicker in there. And if we can ignite that thing, this guy loses again and again and again. And we put this thing out forever. That's very, very important for us to do.
I think that's a great answer, Miles. I mean, I think for a long time, the opposition to Trump was kind of this everything burger of policies where you had to agree with all of them to be in the camp. I'll say as I kind of took up shooting as a hobby and started having a different relationship with Second Amendment, I had thoughts. I'm like, am I still in the group or am I not? And it can't be, if you want to build a broad coalition, it can't be an everything burger. There can be, and especially in this country where there's different demographics and different politics and different regions, and we need different champions coming out of those different locations. We've got to have a few broad priorities that we can all agree on. Democracy being one, protecting children, an emerging one that we seem to all agree on. No one likes what's going on with Epstein. No one likes what's going on with the ICE detention of children. So, anyways, just finding those kind of core commonalities and allowing our coalition to be wide and welcoming folks to come in as they are is I think so key. And I really thank you for reflecting on that. I think it was a really important answer for us to think about as
it's interesting. Forward. It's come up a couple of times this week just because of all the churn we're seeing. I think in a good way that people are realizing this. I mean, the analogy we used earlier this week is, look, the United States teamed up with Joseph Stalin to go defeat Hitler. We can't be so ignorant as to think we have to say, as you noted earlier, that we can have a tight ideological litmus test and win. No, we cannot. We have to.
1944. It was just one question: are you a Nazi?
Yeah.
We need your help.
And you and I didn't intend to build defiance.org to like exemplify that, but our friendship is that, like a libertarian and a socialist bump into each other in a bar. I mean, it's like, it's like almost a joke, but that's how we're able to do this at a small scale. That's how we're going to be able to do it at a national scale. So I think that's really important. And I'll just like one tiny anecdote to add in there, Xander, about how I do think the tide is turning because the opposition's growing. Earlier today, you and I were doing our weekly coffee, and just before we went on, Trump had, tweeted some missive about me. We are clearly getting under his skin. And in that missive, he warned two major news networks. He warned CNN and MS Now that they should not have me on ever again or else. Right. And he's been spending a year threatening folks in media. And unfortunately, a lot of them have capitulated. Whole news networks have capitulated to the man and allow themselves to be sued and bought off by his buddies and intimidated by Trump. Within minutes of that, Xander, who did I hear from? CNN and MS Now. I'll see you on CNN tonight. I'll see you on MS Now in the morning, because folks aren't scared anymore. They're not taking the bullshit. They're not being intimidated. They're standing up. They're pushing back, whether at the grass tops or the grassroots. Everywhere we are starting to see that. Donald Trump knows, as we were talking about earlier in the lead up to bringing Mondale on, he is being backed into a corner. He feels it. We should expect he's going to keep lashing out. Things will get scarier. But we should know that the reason that is happening is he is terrified of the crowd he is seeing form outside his house.
Well, I know before we go, we're getting close to time. Before we go, we always have to do our favorite segment, Who's Joined the Defiance? So, Miles, you want to take us into that?
Sure, I'll take us in. Today on Who's Joining the Defiance, we want to turn to a group that I think would make our first guest of the day, Scott Galloway, proud. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out there that this clip does have some profanity. So if you don't like profanity, plug your ears, turn off the stream. But what can I say? These folks mean business.
All right, meeting. Yeah, Dad! Everyone in the conference room. Now, I know you guys are ready to do business at any moment, but today is not that day. Okay, good. And why?
Yeah.
Yep, fuck the billionaires.
Yeah. Damn right.
No work, no school, no buying anything.
Fuck all of it.
That's right.
Fuck.
Now, I know some people are saying, well, one day is not enough.
Oh.
And it's true, it's not, but we can do more.
Okay.
If you want.
Like what?
We can boycott permanently.
Oh, yeah.
Give me an example, Doug.
Amazon.
Yep, good one. Who else?
Spotify.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck them. You fuck them.
Both good. Who else?
Banks.
Absolutely. If you have the ability to move your money from a bank to a credit union, you would absolutely be fucking them.
Moonwalk on their ass.
What else?
AI.
Fuck AI. All of it. And if you can cancel even one of these, you're doing great. What else?
TikTok.
Eat sugar fuck for breakfast. We'll work on that one.
Fucking do it, Dad.
I hear ya. And look, this isn't going to be comfortable for anyone, but this is how the greedy listen.
Fuck all of them.
Well said, Doug.
Yeah.
And if you need resources or help with it, we're happy to do that.
Fuck them.
Oh, man, I got to say, hats off to our producer, Mercedes O'Brien, who just crushed it with that one. I was so glad that was put in there today. Whether or not you believe those cats were talking, I think the message was still deeply resonant.
That was exactly my type of humor. That was like that early 2000s internet humor. I'm so happy Mercedes found that. By the way, I noticed today when I went to the Resist and Unsubscribe website, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. If you need a easy way to remember those companies, what's that acronym? Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. MAGA. So the first folks you take those guys out. Easy to remember. If you can't, still go to Resist and Unsubscribe. We'll also be sending an email as one of our actions to our Defiance members around that, around supporting that initiative.
One last thing. Let's take a couple of questions if we can. I know we're in overtime, but let's just take a few and then let people go enjoy their Fridays. Go do your thing. Go watch that cat video again. But we have a couple in the chat. One, Urban Hermit asks, what town is Mondale mayor of? He is mayor of the town of Enfield, North Carolina.
I think Enfield is the seventh poorest or sixth poorest town in America. And so Mondale's been doing incredible work, improving housing, trying to fight for power there. The guy didn't need to be a mayor of a small town. He's very busy running one of the larger voter organizers in America. And so, but he took that on. That's been his hometown. Like he said, his family's from there. There's water fountains that his mom was never able to drink from in the center of that town. And so he's been doing incredible work, trying to turn that around and honestly make it a model for the rest of the country on how you can turn around rural towns and provide the necessities they need.
That's amazing. I'm always awed by people who run for local office. It's all of the work, none of the big national glory, and real stuff happens there. I would urge.
I think in his case, no pay. when it's like a very tiny town like that, I think it's like a 4,000 person town.
You know what I found, Xander? That is like some of the best people I've met in elected office. When I've asked them, why did you end up running for elected office? It's not usually because they say, well, since I was a kid, I wanted to be president of the United States. Usually the best people I've met in Congress or elsewhere will say, it's because someone suggested I go do it.
They got
pushed. They needed a nudge. You know, one of my good buddies who's a member of Congress right now, total rock star, a seat opened. He wasn't thinking about running for Congress, and someone said, you should really run for that seat. He hadn't thought of himself as a congressman, and then he went and did it. And so, you know, I would urge folks, whoever needs to hear that right now, who's listening, that maybe you should go run for office. Now's a really, really good time to get off the seat and go do something. And you don't have to have the money to do it yourself. You don't have to be a billionaire. People will fund you. People are inspired by other people who are inspired to do good things. They'll back you. So give that some consideration.
Now more than ever, but just to piggyback on that, there's actually a lot of infrastructure out there to support you, whether it's Run for Something that's trying to find new candidates to run for office, Arena, which helps with staffing those groups. And so I would say, even if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us, because I have a nice Rolodex of the types of organizations that are looking for people to run for office and have infrastructure to support them.
Yeah. And just in general, ask for Xander's Rolodex. You'll be blown away. So, you know, send a message to him, DM him on Substack, ask him for that Rolodex.
You know, before we move on, I want to foot stomp what you said too, because I completely agree. Like the people who want to be in politics because it was a cool job where they could be powerful, and they've been dreaming about it since they were a kid, and they, you know, since being student body president, they wanted to be president of the United States. Not the most inspiring people. They have clouded, you know, reasons why they want to be where they are. The people I found most inspiring, totally what you talked about. They got pushed into it. I mean, my favorite dinner I've had or meeting I've had with anyone in higher office has been Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, who was the preacher at Ebenezer. It was MLK's old church, and his constituency wanted him to run for office. And he got pushed into it. He's spent his life as a pastor, and for that reason, when I had dinner with him, he started out praying for all the children that were going without a meal. You know, that was his first instinct, was to do that. He at the time, Herschel Walker was running against him, and Herschel Walker had just had dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Trump was campaigning with Herschel Walker, and they, you know, what do you think about Herschel Walker being at Mar-a-Lago with Trump? And Raphael Warnock goes, bless his heart. And he didn't mean that as a subtle fuck you. He actually meant bless his heart. Just because the guy knew who he was, and he was there to be a servant to people. And he knew his brand of service was better than Herschel Walker's brand of stomping around some fancy hotel with a billionaire. And so I was so impressed with him, and I've been impressed by the other people, to your point, that kind of accidentally got into this game because they had a calling or people asked them to serve. For sure.
Yeah. Another question we have here from a defiance.org member, Arlene Mock, says, if I create an alternative choices list for the resist and unsubscribe list, will Defiance post it? I would say even better, Arlene, you should post it, and we'll repost it so that you get the credit. We'd love to see that. If other folks have ideas, send them our way. Let's amplify those alternative options. Let's give the good guys some credit.
And true good guys too. Like, not just rewarding neutrality. There are organizations stepping up in this moment, and so we got to go figure out who those folks are. Because, you know, I've got to have some hobbies. Like, I just got rid of all my internet services.
Xander's free this weekend. So if you want to hit him up for that Rolodex, he's got time. But you might have to send him a postcard. We're really lucky that on his list it wasn't resist and unsubscribe from Substack. And
we dodged the
places that were posting. Mira asks, regarding the fight against federal overreach, FAFO, should we be engaging our state AGs to join and support? I think it's a little soon for that, but let me throw it to Xander.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. They just met for the first time in person today in DC. And so we're going to be reconnecting with them over the weekend and early next week to know what their next steps are. Again, like, I think with, you know, Defiance is starting to build a model around this in terms of incubating new projects. Miles and I are not the right person to run almost any project that we come up with. One, we're busy with this. Two, we're not prosecutors in this case, and we probably won't be the right point.
We're not prosecutors yet.
So our goal is really just get things to launch velocity and then support the leaders behind them. So we're going to sync with them this early next week, and then we'll have kind of following actions and orders to support that movement. I'll assume we do want to, you know, this group will want to grow the network of AGs and DAs that are ready to take on lawless ICE actions. But I just don't want to speak out of turn quite yet.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, though. I mean, like, real talk, Xander, you and I are launchers. That's why we're doing this. Not that the two of us haven't executed big things in the past. I mean, I oversaw the largest reorganization of the third largest department in the federal government. Like, it was a lot of fucking work. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to execute.
I once was at a startup with 25 people.
You've executed some big things, but like neither of us wants to go run a big org right now. What we know we both can do is we're good at identifying efforts that need to fill gaps, launching them into the world, or finding the ones that are needed in the right moment and making sure they get the resources and support. That's what needs to be done right now. You guys don't need us to go start 10 new organizations to counter Trump in 10 different ways. You need us to find the best effort at the right moment and to press the button and to make sure it gets supported. And so I will say, I'm thrilled that today this meeting has been happening in Washington. If folks didn't hear us talking about it earlier, blocks from the White House right now, prosecutors, state and local prosecutors are meeting to talk about sharing best practices to hold federal agents accountable who break the law. This has not been done in the modern era. This was a huge problem. We all would have expected that as DHS agents were killing American citizens, that the FBI would swiftly swoop in and take care of the problem. Instead, state and local investigators have been kept out of the picture. There's been total opaqueness about these investigations. There's been no accountability. And we saw an opportunity to make sure that we could empower local prosecutors to step up, hold those agents accountable. That historic meeting is happening right now near the White House. It's probably one of the reasons Trump was mean tweeting about us today, is because he doesn't want to see that happening. He's very worried about what that means, because his team is violating the constitutional rights of American citizens. Don't listen to me, listen to all the federal judges who keep declaring it. We're going to do something about it. So very proud of those prosecutors. They're brave for meeting, and we're going to do everything we can as a community to support them.
Miles, I think you put it in perfect plain speak when the killing of Alex Preddy just what happened. You said, imagine the federal government hiding killers, knowing who killed someone and hiding them. It's exactly what's happening.
And then bragging about it. Greg Bambino bragged about it. He went to the podium and said, you will never know their names about those agents who were there. And then his reasoning was, we don't want them to be doxxed. Oh, wow. Gosh. If only O.J. Simpson could have had that kind of defense, is, hey, you can't know who I am because
what about my family? What about
we can't let murderers get doxxed. How terrible would that be?
Unbelievable. That's what's going on right now. I just want to make sure we're putting and you did, great the other day, Miles, put in the plainest words possible. They are hiring killers. Both Renee Good and Alex Preddy's deaths were ruled homicides by the people that looked into them. So that's exactly what's happening. So thanks for putting in those words. And
well, you know what I saw this week that I think I saw it in the Atlantic. I'm sure a lot of other people did too. You know who's got a higher crime rate than illegal immigrants in the United States? ICE and CBP agents. ICE and CBP agents statistically commit more crimes than illegal immigrants in this country. We're told by this administration that we should be worried about the illegal immigrants, the criminals roaming our streets, the gang monsters, as Donald Trump calls them, when his own team statistically is committing more crimes. Think about that.
By the way, that's what they're prosecuting against. That's against all odds with qualified immunity and whatnot. These guys are committing more crimes, right? Also, I think we should mention and shout out to our producer for bringing us back up, Keith Porter's name, and all the other people that are being killed off camera, especially the black and brown people that are being killed while being detained. That's intentional, just like creating the ghettos for the Jews was intentional in Germany. Move them away from everyone else in society and then do what you want with them. You can move them to the camps after that. And so we should do a better job here at mentioning those names as well. And we will do a better job mentioning those names because they should not be forgotten. They should be just as famous as Alex Preddy and Renee Good.
That's right. Last thing I'll say to folks before I send you off to your weekend, if you want to do something about this, all of this, everything that we're seeing, come join us in the club. This is all we're doing. This is all we're doing every single day. It's not some side job Xander has or I have or Mercedes has. We are fully focused on fighting back against these abuses of power. And I'm awed by the members in the defiance.org community. They're amazing. They're courageous. They come up with incredible ideas for what we could do to fight back. They point us towards remarkable orgs that need to be supercharged to do the great work. And we're going to keep doing it. So check us out at defiance.org. If you want to take us for a test drive and just see, are these the folks that I want to row with in the resistance, in the defiance, just sign up, see what we're up to, see if you want to be a part of it. And we're really grateful. This community keeps getting bigger and more passionate, and we're getting real stuff done. We are protecting actual whistleblowers. We are helping real prosecutors create accountability. We are actively defending journalists who are arrested by this administration. We're doing all that. So come join us. We would love your help and support. And in the meantime, folks, go have a great weekend. And as we always say, stay loud, stay brave, stay together, and we'll be back Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern here at Defiance Daily.